If you're a martial artist and an avid reader, stay tuned to this video because I'm going to talk about the top 3 books I'd recommend reading if you want to dive deeper into the world of Bushido. Hi martial artists, welcome to Zen Ninja. Now I've always enjoyed reading books, and when I first got into the martial arts many years ago, I used to have a little hobby of collecting these books. If I went into a bookshop, I'd always go to the martial arts section. I ended up buying books on martial arts I hadn't even done and never went on to do, but I always found them interesting to look at the techniques, learn some of the philosophy, etc, etc. Now on today's video I'm going to talk about the top 3 very important books I would recommend reading that will give you a deep dive into the world of Bushido, strategy, philosophy and martial arts. Now there are other books out there that can support your training, like when you get into a martial art for the first time. Books like this, The Way of the Sword, Iaido by Michael Finn Sensei, beautiful book, gives you an introduction on his training and then shows you the forms and talk about what goes on. So these type of books that give you that introduction, a bit of instruction, are great. But the type of books that I'm going to talk about on this video in the top 3 are very different. So let's start with number 3. So the first book that I would recommend is a book called Hager Cure, written by Yamamoto Sanetomo, who was a retainer for one of the clans in that era. And this book was written at a time where really, the samurai were kind of coming into an end. It was a time of peace. And it really talks about retaining the warrior spirit and everything they went through. It's a detailed account of things that went on, but it's also got a lot of philosophy, strategy in it, and just basic advice for life. A lot of these martial arts books, they're not just going to help your martial arts, get you to think differently, change your perspective, but a lot of them too will help you as a person for life. Now, there are different versions. You can get this manga copy here. So if you like graphic novels, if you're into your anime and stuff like that, you can read different formats of it that might be easier to understand. It's also heavily featured in a film called Ghost Dog with Forrest Whitaker. Now let's just read a little bit so I can tell you sort of what I mean about the philosophy in it. So, a samurai should not, in the slightest degree, say or do something faint-heartedly. Never forget this. The depths of one's heart is discernible even through something seemingly inconsequential. And right there, it's just telling you that treat everything as if it's important. Give your all in everything you do because it says a lot about you and will also forge a really strong spirit. So, Hager Cure, if you haven't read it and you like the samurai, get out there and grab a copy. Next up is a book you've probably all heard something about at some point or another, and it's The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu, who was a Chinese military general, a strategist, a tactician, and this book still today is being used in business, in the martial arts, in all sorts of things to get people to learn strategy and really to change their way of thinking. If we just look at any passage from here, so we can form a single united body while the enemy must split up into factions. Hence there will be a whole pitted against separate parts of a whole, which means we shall be many to the enemy's few. Divided you can conquer, right? You can see some of the philosophy and strategy in there about breaking your enemy up and taking them out in parts rather than taking the whole force out, as when the whole force works together they could be really strong. But yeah, Sun Tzu, guys, I'd highly recommend reading it. And what you'll find as you practice your martial arts is that this kind of philosophy will start blending into what you do, especially when you do sparring and things like that. It will improve your sparring because it's not just about your technique and about your physicality, but actually about how you use your mind and how you react. Now, speaking of a book that will definitely up your sparring game, let's now get to the last book, the number 1 book I'd recommend to read if you're a martial artist. It's probably no surprise to any of you if you've been in the martial arts for a while or you've really been digging into philosophy and just well-known people within the martial arts. The Book of Five Rings, written by Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's most famous swordsman, probably most famous martial artist in terms of history. There's so many legends about Miyamoto Musashi, and he fought in over 60 life and death duels and came out the other side. Now, some say the Book of Five Rings was written when Miyamoto Musashi got to a point in his life where he kind of retired from combat, went off into the mountains, into a cave to write this book. And other accounts say that it was pieced together from his just general writings. Who knows? What I do know is it's a very, very important book to read. It's got strategy in there, it's got philosophy in there, and it comes from a man who was incredibly inventive off of his own back and strategic and successful. He did a lot of his own training. He was self-taught a lot, and there are very few people that can actually do that. Majority of people really need a teacher. I think everybody needs a teacher to get the best out of them and to learn, but there are certain special individuals that can do a lot of that themselves, that can find the spirit of something. And it talks about the spirit of the art that you're doing and it talking to you. You know, you're either going to be susceptible to that or you're not. But what you find in the martial arts is it does start expressing itself back to you, and you learn a lot from the unspoken words. If we just look at a piece in here. So to humiliate the enemy by blocking and countering. In real combat, there are usually many blows thrown by each of the combatants. It is truly rare for a fight to consist of one man attacking and the other countering. You must practice consistently to understand the need to continuously strike and counter strike until you will overcome the will of the enemy. It is essential that you're able to fire a death strike as a natural extension of your block. You will be able to develop this concept through repetitive practice of your formal exercises. You must practice with the intensity of a real life situation, or it becomes a game and you can easily be beaten. Quite a lot just in that little passage about you must practice to defend and attack, defend and counter. Not only that, when you do counter, there must be complete will and spirit in that counter. It can't be faint-hearted. And talking about when you do practice, they say you will fight the way that you train. Yes, you've got to have that intensity of a real life situation. In Iaido, if you've ever practiced that, the art of drawing and cutting with a Japanese sword to an opponent, an imaginary opponent, you really develop that sanshin, that awareness. You really have to focus on that enemy and what that enemy is doing, because it really does impact how your form goes and how you train. Same for any training, any shadow boxing you do, any kata you do, anything within the martial arts. You have to visualize that enemy in front of you. Be very, very focused and determined. Well, there you go, guys. I hope this video has been helpful to you. What are some of your books out there that you've read along your martial arts journey? Jump down in the comments and let us know. And would you agree with my top 3? Would you change it? Is there anything that you would add? Thanks for watching this video. This is Zen Ninja. See you on the next one.